Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Wow, what a story over the weekend I came across. And it's one of these things where you go, it's a joke. It's, is it April Fool's? Is someone pulling my leg? Or is this just a one-off kind of thing? But the line that grabbed my attention, a mother talking of her child. We are so deeply invested into making sure that that child becomes a wonderful Nazi. Yeah, an Ohio couple known as Mr. and Mrs. Saxton, not their real names, because evidently they're not that invested in it. They have been running this dissident homeschool program that has about 2,400 members. And it's all about getting good Nazi curriculum out to the children. Because, for instance, on MLK Day, the line that they want the children to learn, that it's up to the parents to make sure that the parents understand and teach the children that King was deceitful, dishonest, riot inciting. He was a riot inciting Negro who actually was the face of a movement which ethnically cleansed whites out of urban areas and precipitated the anti-white regime that we are now fighting to free ourselves from. Yeah, this is what they're teaching their children. They're encouraging meetup groups. They're having pool parties. Good ethnic cleansing kind of stuff. Demanding that they only hang around with other crazy radical white supremacists. But here's the thing. This is what gets me. And as I'm reading through the story of this couple that lives in Upper Sandusky, Ohio, which is right near Cedar Point, a great fun place. I lived in that area for a little while. Good, decent people. They look like normal people. Members of the Masons Club, participants in the community. Look on the outside. But wow. And you look at the hatred, the anger. It's the same stuff that you would have expected to see, 100 years ago. It's the same kind of hatred that's been bubbling up. And look, this is the Trump effect. This has made this stuff more okay in certain circles. And it's frightening, especially over the weekend, as we talked about the murder of a black man by 5 black police officers. Race relations in this country, a real problem. And when you have this kind of stuff that goes on, where you have this kind of anti-Semitism, this kind of racism, we're in a scary moment. And for everybody who thinks, no, everything's just fine. No, everything's just fine. There's just a handful of them. I don't know. Because when you looked at some of the comments and some of the stuff that goes in there, wow, we're at a frightening moment. And this is why I come to, these kind of things keep popping up. Now, I've always been against homeschooling. I've always said it's child abuse. Most of it is done on the religious front. We want to promote Christian warriors who are going to go out and whatever that mindset is. But this too, this tearing us apart. Now, I grew up in an era where we were talking about the melting pot. All of us came here from different places. All of us, love this country, and all of us, believe in this country, and want to be Americans. And yet, I see this kind of stuff, this hatred, and it's frightening. And what's interesting to me is, while the people who are doing this, and again, it goes back to what I've always said. It's that thing my mother used to say: if someone's pointing their finger at you, you got 3 fingers pointing back at them. So if they're accusing you of doing something, they're probably doing it 3 times as bad. And this is that. We hear all the time, they're trying to indoctrinate the children with that theory about race that's critical. or they're trying to indoctrinate the children with the drag shows. When the reality is, you want to talk about indoctrination. We're going to hand an infant an AR-15. We're going to have Nazi school curriculum for elementary students. And as I was reading through this story, and I was thinking about it, because again, these are people who you would think they're just good old-fashioned, good old American folk. And the hatred that bubbles up there, the jealousy, the anger, it's quite incredible. Now, I come across it a lot. My email box gets some pretty vile stuff. But it reminded me of the woman I met in Erie when we were doing our Working Class Heroes tour. And she was standing outside with this giant, with the word F Biden printed on it. And I had to go up and ask her, because there were kids walking up and down the street. I had to ask her, what do your children think of you doing this? And she had the nerve to tell me, well, she didn't say it. I go, much worse, you're standing here holding it. Complete disconnect. And then she began to lecture me about how her 13-year-old was smarter than me on politics, and that he would put me in my place. And maybe that's so. But what 13-year-old should be in this kind of anger, hate-filled kind of politic? 13-year-old should be playing ball in the park. 13-year-old should be enjoying their childhood instead of becoming a Christian warrior on the front lines of the race wars, which is what these folks are trying to do. You see all these people going to school board meetings. That's indoctrination. That kind of hatred is wow. And the question I keep coming back to, there's a guy, there are a couple of people who live around my neighborhood who have the F Biden flags up on the poles. What message is that sending? The coarseness of our language, the coarseness of our discourse, our inability to express ourselves and to speak in ways that are not just throwing bombs at each other. It's frightening. And what message does this send to the kids? What does the future hold? If look, now these people in their 30s, I'm sure their parents in their 50s are just as bad. Probably not worse. But we're building a generation of really frightening people. Every once in a while you'll hear one of these crazy stories come up. Back about 10, 12 years ago, you had that couple from New Jersey who named their kid Adolf Hitler, and named the other two kids, what was it, Jocelyn Lynn Aryan Nation, and the other one, Rosalind Hitler Janine. I'm like, what the heck is this? Now, eventually the state did take those kids away because they were, abusive and all kinds of stuff. But it all happened because these people thought it'd be cute to name their child Adolf Hitler. It'd be cute to go to the local baker and try and get them to put a happy birthday Adolf Hitler on a cake. Because again, it was about attention seeking. This has gone beyond attention seeking. This has gone beyond, hey, look at me. This has gone to the point of an international movement of people who are trying to really tear us apart. And the question is, what kind of a society are we? Are we a society who, it's okay. That's their right to indoctrinate their children? Because we're hearing right now, and this is what's going on in Congress right now, there are parental rights bills that we shouldn't have any say in what parents do with their kids. And look, I'm a parental rights guy. I don't want government or anybody else telling me how to raise my children, but there's a moment, there's a place where you're endangering not just your children, but society by creating these kind of, dangerous people. I'm frightened by it for the future of what happens. I was thinking about this kid because I think it was 2009 when the Campbell people out in New Jersey did the whole thing with Adolf. That kid's probably around 17, 18 now. I got to wonder, what kind of future does that kid have? And as I was remembering that case, I went back and looked up the story. The father went to court and in a full Nazi uniform. And his statement was, if they're good judges, if they're good people, they'll look within and not what's on the outside. But here's my problem. What's on the outside is what's on the inside. And the question is, who are we? What kind of a society are we going to be? Are we going to be a society that's opening and welcoming? Are we going to be the kind of a society that says that you can lead your best life? You have the right to do what you want as long as it doesn't infringe on others while protecting the children from, well, I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts. Does the state have an interest in not promoting a Nazi child? A mother who wants her child to be the very best Nazi he can be? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Quick break, right back. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So corporate America, with the help of their Republican Party lackeys, are about to go on the offensive as predicted. A couple of pieces of legislation that are going to be bouncing around. The Stopping, I love this one. Stopping Home Office Work's Unproductive Problems Act, or the Show Up Act. This is going to make sure that no one is allowed in the federal government to stay home and work from home. You have to come to work. None of this laying around in your PJs. There's that. There's also the Freedom for Healthcare Workers Act, which is coming up for a vote. That basically says no more mask mandates. So if you work in a nursing home, you have the freedom, you have the liberty to make your patients sick by not wearing a mask, because that's your freedom. And of course, the Pandemic is Over Act. We've won. Ta-da! Done. There is that. So congratulations. All you had to do was elect a Republican House, and it's over. So there is that. Now, here's the other part of this. Corporate America is really going to try and regain control, and the recession that they've been pushing for is a big part of it. Legislation by Republicans, a big part of it. I look out in California. You may remember we've talked about this Fast Recovery Act. It's the Fast Food Act to make sure that fast food workers, have some say in the workplace. It's really one of the first tries at legislatively bringing on sectorial bargaining into this country to ensure that an industry has a floor, that we use legislation, we use collective bargaining on mass scales between employers, workers, and government to ensure that there are safe working conditions, decent wages, all that stuff. The CEO of McDonald's, in an open letter published on January 25th, said basically, it's impossible to run a small business in California because, the thought is it's going to raise wages in the fast food industry. And, some of the thoughts are it's going to make fast food workers make about $22 an hour. Now, in other countries, this happens because we don't have, the massive inequality in wage that we have in this country. And this, well, McDonald's can't have. Now, what I find interesting is McDonald's is not a small business. They seem like a pretty big business, because if you know what the FAST Act is, it only affects fast food chains that have 100 or more locations in the state. So you've got to be, I don't know, small business is 100. I'm thinking 2 or 3, but this is 100, and they're saying it's going to be your big chains. It's going to be McDonald's. It's going to be Burger King, Wendy's. It's going to be those Chipotle, some of those, because McDonald's got like 14,000 restaurants in the U.S. Not what I would consider a small business. Now he's complaining that this is going to kill small business. It's going to dry up the jobs and all this, and I disagree. What it's going to do is it's going to redistribute the wealth that's created. Because here's the weird thing: our CEO pocketed in 2021 $7.4 million. Now he put in his pocket $7.4 million. Did not flip one burger. Did not drop one basket of fries, did not take one order, did not empty one waste can, did not empty one grease bucket, didn't mop a floor, didn't smile at a customer, did not take abuse from abusive customer, did nothing productive to earn $1, but took $7.4 million, or in minimum wage terms, 490 people. He took in 1 year with 490 employees making minimum wage earned that year by doing all those things and making the profit that they're taking on. But it's impossible to run a small business, according to this person. Now understand, there's going to be millions and millions of dollars in California spent on this referendum that's going to hit right for the presidential election in 2024, because they've got to claw back the power to, well, crush working people. And this is where the frustration of this moment is. Because we as working people, and I ask this question all the time, what are you? Are you a worker first, or are you a consumer first? Sadly, too many of us view ourselves as consumers first. What can I buy? How cheap can I get something? Instead of thinking, it's the chicken or egg, if you will. Do you see yourself as a worker? Should I make a decent wage? Should I have good health care? Should I have good retirement security? Should I have a say? Should I have security? Should I have these things first and then go into the free market? Sadly, we've been trained like Pavlovian dogs. It's all about, what's that Walmart, lower prices, better living. Well, how do you think you get that? You get that by crushing wages. And corporate America has done that in masterful ways over the last couple of decades. And we're going to see it again. This referendum in California is going to be interesting to watch, because they're going to spend, like I said, millions of dollars convincing middle-income America that the poor is coming for them. Going to convince someone who's making $22 an hour now that they are better, they are more skilled, they are more dedicated, more loyal, whatever the word's going to be, than those fast food workers who are just teenagers, who are just, snot-nosed kids with their first jobs, when the reality is that's not what it is at all. Sadly, since we've lost so much manufacturing, since we've lost so much of our production capacity, those fast food jobs, if you'll remember, go with me in the way back machine. George W. Bush was president. They actually wanted to make fast food jobs production, factory jobs. They wanted to classify making a sandwich the same as building a car. They wanted to make them factory jobs so that they could say, we've got manufacturing jobs. See, now you're manufacturing a pickle on a whole wheat bun. And how's that thing go with the sesame seeds and all that? Yeah, that was what they tried. Now, it didn't work, because people go, that's not right. But they're going to play this division game again, and because they're masters at it. They're so good at getting us to look behind us and go, you're not worthy. Instead of reaching back and saying, here's a hand, let's all do better. Now, here's the weird part. Whether you're making 22, whether you're making 15, whether you're making 725, your interests are more aligned between the three of you than you have with the guy making $7.4 million a year. Telling the people who actually do the work, sorry, can't afford that. Now, what's interesting to me is I got a lot of responses from people who when I put this out on social media who said, look, there are chains out there that are doing this, that are paying good wages, that are treating their employees well, and make a great product at a competitive price. For me, the bigger part of all of this is, yeah, we want to make sure that the industry pays a wage that people can survive on so that the taxpayers don't have to subsidize these huge corporations, because that's what this is. Most of those fast food workers are women with children who get subsidies from the state to be able to supplement their income to be able to make it. We're subsidizing multi-billion-dollar industries so that CEOs and presidents can put $7.4 million in their pockets. Instead of saying, no, you pay your own freight. You pay your workers so that they can support themselves and the taxpayer doesn't have to. We're not doing that. And corporate America is afraid of this. For me, it's about time we start undoing some of the damage we've done over the years through bad policy. And one of it is this franchise model. Everything's a franchise. Everything, you get the big conglomerate name, but you don't have to deal with all of the labor implications. You know, McDonald's doesn't own all 14,000 restaurants. McDonald's is a real estate company. They own a lot of land. They own the license. They own the distribution. They don't flip the hamburgers. They don't put the bag out the window, but they collect the cash. And they got people out there who are the franchisees who then can have to go out and have to cutthroat compete. And how do they do that? They do that by cheating their workers. They do that by, you know what, rolling downhill. And who's at the bottom of the hill? The minimum wage worker. So this to me is an opportunity to go, you know what? We don't need 14,000 McDonald's. Maybe we need a couple of McDougal's. Maybe we need, Joe's Restaurant. Maybe we need someone, named a couple of other ones that I'd never heard of. Maybe we have some innovation. Maybe we have some other ways of doing. Maybe we get away from the homogeny of all of these franchises. Here's a thought. Maybe we reimagine an economy where a bunch of fast food workers can then start their own. That's how an economy used to work. Instead of having a behemoth like this who's going to impose their will because they have the economic resource and the economic power to do it, maybe, just a thought, maybe we start thinking about how we empower workers. Now, 2024, a presidential year, this is going to, they're choosing this specifically because they want to play on that anger. Because they're hoping the recession comes. They're hoping that recession goes right into 24. So people are ticked at workers because workers are the ones they're blaming. They're going to blame them. Trust me. All those people wanted unions. They wanted wage increases. All those wage increases causes the prices to go up. Never mind the fact that we know it's the corporations who are gouging our eyes out. But we've got a corporate media who keeps spinning the no. It's those greedy workers. How dare they want to feed their families? How dare they? It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because, as I look at this is a good piece of legislation I think can be modeled across the country if only we had the courage. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2011. That was the day California first celebrated its state holiday, known as Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution. Born on January 30th, 1919, Fred Korematsu was among those victimized by President Roosevelt's wartime Executive Order 9066, mandating Japanese-American internment. Born in Oakland, California, Korematsu worked as a shipyard welder. He was arrested and eventually convicted after refusing to report to authorities for internment. The ACLU took up his case, hoping to test the legality of 9066. Korematsu and his family were relocated to the Central Utah Wars Relocation Center in Topaz, Utah. There he worked 8 hours a day for $12 a month and waited for his case to travel through the legal system. It eventually reached the U.S. Supreme Court. In Korematsu v. United States, the court held that compulsory exclusion though constitutionally suspect, is justified during circumstances of emergency and peril. After his release, Korematsu worked odd jobs and faced discrimination and wage theft. He eventually resettled in Oakland with his wife and children. In 1983, Korematsu's conviction was finally vacated. 15 years later, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He became a tireless activist for civil liberties and worked to ensure internment could never happen again. Before his death in 2005, he served on the Constitution Project's Liberty and Security Committee. He warned, quote, "No one should ever be locked away simply because they share the same race, ethnicity, or religion as a spy or terrorist. If that principle was not learned from the internment of Japanese Americans, then these are very dangerous times for our democracy." Fred Korematsu Day is also celebrated in Hawaii, Virginia, and Florida.
Big news from congressional Republicans. After years of failing to unearth any proof that America's elections are corrupted by flagrant cases of voter fraud, the GOP has now found a whopper. Unfortunately for the party's voter integrity police, what they've uncovered is not some nefarious Democratic plot, but a scheme of mass deception by one of their own Congress critters, George Santos. Last November, he effectively stole a New York City congressional seat. How? By making himself up. Santos invented a fictional George that hid his criminal record and touted an amazing storybook past he never lived. No, he is not Jewish. His grandparents were not Holocaust survivors. He was not a volleyball star at a prestigious college he never even attended. He was not a renowned Wall Street banker, though he did help run a Florida Ponzi scheme. He was not a New York City real estate baron, and the mystery money that financed his campaign apparently came from nowhere. Naturally, when Congress's fraud-busting Republican leaders learned that this hyper-fraudster came from their own ranks, they promptly expelled him. Just kidding. Instead, Kevin McCarthy, the GOP's unscrupulous congressional leader, has fully embraced this defrauder as an honorable member of his legislative team, sanctimoniously declaring, quote, "The voters elected Santos to serve." That makes Kevin even more dishonest than George. One, the people did not elect Santos, but voted for the caricature he concocted to fool them. Two, McCarthy doesn't give a damn about the integrity of elections. He's only clinging to George because his own support in the House is so iffy that he needs Santos's vote to save his own worthless political hide. This is Jim Hightower saying, Santos is a congenital liar, but McCarthy is a self-serving political hack, and neither one should be in public office.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it looks like the GOP Brain Trust has realized their 30% tax scheme not very popular. Their plan to destroy Social Security and Medicare not getting the reviews that they thought they were going to get, so it's time to break out the tried, true, tested BS. And today my email box was full of GOP front groups and power mongers with, claiming, hey, the mask mandates are coming back. They're coming for the children. In fact, GOP presidential wannabe Mike Pompeo sent me an email to remind me, just wanted to remind me, that there are power-hungry, woke mobs of liberal unionized teachers who are coming for the children. They're coming. So be afraid. Forget all that other stuff. Be afraid. And this is what they do masterfully. You got to give them credit. It's predictable. You know it's coming, but they're good at it. And here to share some thoughts on just how good they are at it, I've asked Sherry Jacobus to come talk with us. She is a political strategist and host of the podcast Politics with Sherry Jacobus. Sherry, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, I look at this and, I get this email today and I'm going, woke, liberal, woke, this again? We're going back through this again? Pretty predictable. We need the distraction. I need the outrage candy.
Yeah, that's what they have to do. Well, and the mask mandates, we still have people dying of COVID. I've had family members who didn't bother getting their second booster, went to a family event. They all got COVID, including a 91-year-old man, my father, in the hospital. I mean, this is rough stuff. And I'm immune compromised from chemo. So I wear my mask everywhere still. I know a lot of people that do. there's a reason for that. So this business, this is kind of a DeSantis thing too, the whole not wearing masks and COVID is over. And now, as you know, Republicans have decided, we've got Marjorie Taylor Greene saying they're going to pass legislation basically saying COVID is over.
Ta-da!
It's gone. It's like, no, it's really not. It's not gone. We've been living with it for a while. We've found ways to mitigate it. And part of that is masking. And sometimes when there's an outbreak and a surge, yes, we all have to mask, including some kids. And most kids are okay with that, I think, until they see their parents freaking out because their parents are listening to, right-wing media. So kids are pretty, adaptable. If they have to wear a mask, sometimes they'll do it. So this is manufactured outrage because the other stuff they're doing, as you said, is kind of landing with a thud, not helping them out.
But the thing is this is 40 years of this kind of stuff. It's predictable. It's what they do very well. I mean, we had the stove troopers not too long ago, and it got me wondering, if this were the 1970s when we were doing away with asbestos and lead and gasoline, would there have been someone on the floor of the house wearing an asbestos coat going, "No, how dare you take my asbestos coat? It's so warm in the summertime," or "How dare you not let my children eat lead paint chips?" I mean, this is how crazy we've gotten.
Yeah. Well, I used to be a Republican and I worked in Republican politics and was kind of a part of all of that. I was what they always called a rhino, though. But I saw the evolution of the right-wing media. And, it used to be very different. But when you've got that much time to fill, people fill it with outrage because then you have to get the eyeballs and the ears for all of this sort of thing. And so the competition becomes really stiff. So they have to become more outrageous and more polarizing so that the right and the left can't work together, so that Republicans and Democrats can't work together. And the dirty little secret back when I first started working on Capitol Hill decades ago was that Republicans and Democrats did work together on most everything. And back when I was a pundit on television, for about 20 years, I was on Fox a whole lot, CNN, MSNBC before, Trump took care of all of that. You would get these invitations to go on the air, but they only wanted you on, Fox only wanted you on if you would be like kind of a far right-wing nutcase in some cases. So there were many times when I would say, well, no, that's not really something I can say or something I care about that much. And they only wanted the outrage, and that was fueled by right-wing talk radio and Rush Limbaugh, of course, the king of that. And it just grew into this kind of a monster that now drives policy in this country.
No, I mean, I used to have friends who I disagreed with. They have all gone off in different ways and gotten even more extreme. And I keep coming back to, you said, politicians used to work together. They used to drink together. Their families used to do things together. Now there's none of that. And that's bad for working people. It's good for the corporate interest because, the status quo is good for the people who are doing very well in this economy. But for working people, this isn't good stuff.
No, it's not. Everything gets kind of skewed. And we have these people who become stars who should be behind bars. Marjorie Taylor Greene is arguably now the most powerful woman in politics because she's got McCarthy by the doodads. Can I say doodads on your show?
Yeah, no, there's an image.
But that is something that could not have happened before. In fact, even to have a close working relationship with the speaker of your party or the minority leader in your party, you would have to be someone who had been in Congress for a while and kind of proven yourself in committee and shown that you can get things done. Now, you've got somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene who has this kind of power because she literally was holding one of the people holding the speakership hostage so that it took 15 rounds of voting for McCarthy to become speaker. And so now people like her own him. And you hear that there are these sane Republicans out there. Some of them are making noises that they're objecting to certain Democrats being kicked off committees and that sort of thing. And we keep hearing about them. They actually have the power to also hold McCarthy hostage should they decide to use that power. They can do it. No. In fact, Democrats any member of Congress can call for a vote now to de-gavel the speaker. And I hope that the first time that happens, that's their new rule. I hope the first time that happens is that it's done by a Democrat and for some very good reasons that need lots of attention. That's how you message things. That use it to their advantage instead of saying, well, when they go low, we go high. It's like, no, fight them. Use the rules to your advantage.
See, I like
their
you.
rules.
I like you. See, when people were doing that. No, when they go high, you go low. We go high. I go no. When they go low, I played football for years. They go low, you smash their face into the dirt, so they don't do it again. That's what you do.
You know, we didn't used to consider, Republicans and Democrats didn't used to consider each other enemies, and now the Republicans are using terminology that they definitely think we are enemies. They like Putin, but
How did that happen?
Democrats are, well, Putin gets a lot of money, which flows through the NRA. I mean, he's their guy. That's why some of them are in Congress. I mean, do you really think that George Santos didn't get to Congress by rubles? I mean, come on. We know that he's backed. Yeah. So I think that Putin and Russia have infiltrated more of our politics than we realize. Some people know and realize it, but they're afraid to say it.
But Sherry, I'm told that's all a hoax.
Yeah. And that's why people are afraid to say it, because they don't like being told that, well, that's a hoax and you're a tinfoil hat conspiracist.
No, and this is where the media empire that they've built is so important to point out. The fact that they have such a big megaphone and there's nothing on the other side. People beat up on CNN. CNN's not even close. MSNBC nowhere even in the ball game. And look, they dominate talk radio like no other. They have the media, they have the megaphone, they've got the echo chamber, and they're tied in with all of these state policy network think tanks. They're tied in with all of these talking heads and all these. It's really impressive what they've built. You have to kind of be in awe.
Well, yeah, and it's a very strong network, and it's well funded. And the left does not have anything like that. Air America that they had was, kind of fizzled out. And I've got, you ever seen YS on Twitter? And he's now left Twitter. He's just YS. He's a former, kind of a big honcho, one of the cable nets, actually CNN. And I've had him on my podcast. I'm having him on again. He's going to talk to me about why he left Twitter. But he explains why there's so much there. You look at the new right-wing media that's popping up, particularly television, cable, trying to get, you've got Newsmax and you've got some of these others that are popping up. Why so many of them? And News Nation, leans right, although they're not like a Newsmax or anything like that. But why are they all leaning in that direction? There's so few left-wing.
I can tell you, it's the money.
It's because, and this is what YS explained to us, it's because product advertising is kind of dying on cable news. It's commercial, it's regular networks are doing okay with it. It's all gone digital, and so there's all this dark money in the super PACs, this right-wing dark money that they're all chasing after, and that's why CNN has tilted. I hate to say tilted nuts a little bit, MAGA, and it's because of the money. They're all chasing that money. The way you get rid of it, of course, is Citizens United, which will never happen. But you've got the big money people who want all the goodies they get. They want their corporate tax breaks. So they're going to pour all this money into the so-called social issues and the evangelical stuff and all the stuff that really, this rage machine for the uneducated MAGA people that Trump loves so much. And so they're putting that money into cable to get and I'm sure right-wing media as well, right-wing radio as well, to keep the unwashed masses, MAGA masses, enraged over the social issues, so that our United States oligarchs, our American oligarchs, and others can still get the goodies. So they're using the evangelicals and the uneducated, getting them, so they give the eyeballs and everything to these networks, and they're using them, they're pouring the money in there so that they get what they want.
Yeah, to rob us blind. And basically the premise of what we do here, pointing out all the time, is that the status quo benefits the very wealthy, the 1%, who do fund all this stuff, because it comes down to the money that they invest in this, and they get a massive return on investment. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show, where Sherry Jacobus, she's a political...
It's Jacobus, by the way.
Sorry. Sherry Jacobus. She's a political strategist and host of the podcast Politics with Sherry Jacobus. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. So, in looking at the most recent fight that we just saw over at the RNC, obviously Ronna McDaniels came out ahead. I was hoping for the pillow guy. I really wanted to see him. Look, if we're going down the tubes, I want the pillow guy leading it. I'm curious your thoughts on how that played out.
Oh, I mean, that was just a joke. She's a joke, Ronna McDaniels. But their entire platform before was they didn't even have one. It's just whatever Donald Trump wants, that's what we'll do. Whatever he wants, we don't even care what it is. That was literally the RNC platform, and Ronna McDaniel ran with that, and that seemed to work well. But well, actually not so well, because what have they lost? They barely won the House majority in a year where I think they thought they were going to do a lot better. So I'm thinking, if it's just the pillow guy running against her, obviously he's not, my pillow guy, nothing's going to happen there. But why are they keeping her? I mean, is she some sort of fundraising powerhouse? I mean, without NRA Putin money, I mean, what can they do? So her track record isn't that great. So it's kind of mystifying to me that she didn't get challenged by somebody more serious. And that tells me that though they think that they claim that they're separating themselves from Trump and they're being independent from him. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. They're still in lockstep with him. They might be hoping that somebody else comes up, a different face, but it'll still be MAGA. It'll still be Trumpism. It just won't be Trump. They might be shying away from him because they don't think he's going to survive that, all the legal stuff at some point. Maybe some of the big money people are getting sick of it. But see, they've been growing these other little mini Trumps, like you've got Ron DeSantis. So it could be that some of the big money people, and this is, we've heard this a little bit, the big money people are just nervous about Trump and sick of Trump. And they think that DeSantis is a more malleable, smarter, easier to manage Trump.
Do you think he's
still MAGA though?
Do you think he's the replacement then?
Yeah, I think they think there's really nobody else. Trump is now starting to attack him. I mean, but if you've seen him out there on the campaign trail, I mean, he has the personality of a wet dish rag. I mean, he's nothing. Trump is nuts and crazy and gets up there and, I mean, remember they kept the cameras on him. Jeff Zucker, when he was running CNN famously at a big town hall for all CNN employees, when they were expressing concern that all of the coverage was going to be giving Trump the nomination. This was in 2015, 2016. And it was Jeff Zucker who greenlit The Apprentice for Trump when he was head of entertainment at NBC and very good friends with Trump, said, I don't care. Keep the cameras on him till the eyeballs leave. Now, that's not news. That's not news coverage. That's not journalism. But it's because Trump was so outrageous and crazy and evil and disgusting. And so everybody just tuned in to watch him. Plus, they were kind of forcing him on us. And then he was able to, wield that power that he had of the ratings, use that as a cudgel to beat them over the head to get what he wanted. And it worked for him. So these network executives, at some point, they just caved to him and he was running the show. I'd never seen anything like it. And I've been involved in politics and media and campaigns for, decades. And that was just chilling.
Now, what is it? But, I look at this and I remember back then going, what does this say about us as a society when this guy who's got a track record of bankruptcies and cheating workers out of wages and, all the things that he was the guy. What does it say about us?
Well, that we like that type of reality TV, I guess, but I think most people didn't think it would ever really happen. And, you remember that first debate, the Fox News debate. And I heard that, before that, Roger Ailes had been like, okay, so we've had our fun. We've all got our ratings. Now it's time to get serious. And so Megyn Kelly, that's when she was asking the questions and basically about the misogyny and that sort of thing, kind of nailing him on this. And after that, Roger Ailes and the executives at Fox were so blown away by the response they got from viewers. Well, those were actually bots and trolls, the Putin bots and trolls. But Fox News was fooled into thinking that they were actual Trump supporters in the primary when you had 15 people. running at that point. But he had helped build that monster too.
Yeah.
Corey Lewandowski told me point blank, this was in May or June of 2015, that he and Trump had dinner with Roger Ailes, and he had said, "Oh, we'll do anything we can to help you." Well, I was thinking, yeah, right. Kind of rolling my eyes because he probably said that to everyone. Well, he probably did. He was being polite. But Trump and Putin knew how to work it so that the media executives who thought they were in charge, we'll have our fun with these ratings and then we'll do the responsible thing. Well, by the time they decided to do that, they were no longer in charge. Donald Trump was, because then he'd be like, I will cut you off. You will not get any interviews from me, and I will tell everybody not to watch you. So, but I wanted to say something about that PAC money before it goes to the dark money that goes to the cable nets. The reason MSNBC is not vulnerable to that is because they're under NBC, which is still one of the three big commercial nets. So they're still getting product advertising. So they're not out there chasing the dark money. If they ever have to, God help us, because then we've got no one. But it would be good if there'd be some money that would be put into something on the other side, more of the cable, more talk radio. They say outrage sells. Well, there's plenty to be outraged about. Just keeping up with all of the Trump and MAGA scandals should be enough with radio, with people going on long trips and truckers. And that's where Rush Limbaugh built a big audience with that demographic. So you would have to be smart enough to have the money, the people. So who's going to be giving that kind of money? What Democratic big donor would care enough to put that kind of money into funding some of that? And what would be their reason for doing it?
And that's the question. And when you figure that out, let me know, because we haven't found them.
Well,
because the reality is
different agendas.
Yep, they buy politicians. They don't buy infrastructure.
Well, that's well put.
No, I mean, they fall in love with candidates. They waste $100 million on Jamie Harris and Amy McGrath. They spend all of this money on campaigns they can't win for the vanity, instead of thinking long term like the Republicans did years ago and built an infrastructure and created an environment to foster a bench. The left, Democrats, however you want to put that, they didn't have that vision.
Well, and there wasn't anybody, for example, to go in and put a lot of radio into West Virginia when they needed to, beat up Joe Manchin a little bit. So he is a free ride there.
Yep.
Radio in West Virginia is very cheap. It works. A lot of people there aren't online and very familiar with the state. Radio still works, old-fashioned radio, and it's cheap. So an interested party could have come in and taken some of the power away from Joe Manchin by giving him a little bit of trouble back home. But the DNC wasn't going to go in and spend any money against a fellow Democrat. And, obviously Republicans aren't going to do it. So that's where, on the right, you have all of this dark money and all these super PACs with these lovely sounding names that'll go in and do that. But there wasn't anybody on the other side who would go in and try and, make some corrections to Manchin when he was just out of control.
There's no balance. And it's the reason we started this program 18 years ago. As a truck driver myself, I lived through that. I watched the right destroy our lunchroom. I watched how they took over the messaging in our lunchroom and changed working people. J.D. Scholten in Iowa told me that, Iowa used to be a strong, moderate Democratic state, but talk radio turned it into a raging radical state. It's not even a Republican state. It is a radical state now. And that's frightening.
Well, it also changed the Republican Party. I was a Republican, came in. I worked for Bob Michael, for goodness sake. And now no one really would consider him nowadays. He wouldn't be allowed in the party. Ronald Reagan wouldn't even be allowed in the party right now. So I saw how it changed the Republican Party. I came to Washington when Reagan was president. So this change, it was little by little. Even during when Newt became speaker, it wasn't like this. It definitely was a huge shift. And that's when I would see people at the table that I was like, well, what's that person doing here? Or this group, the evangelical kind of nutty right wing that before, oh yeah, they're there and they're kind of off on the fringe. And then it's like, but now they have a seat at the table. Yeah. I remember being shocked being in leadership meetings because I was communications director for the House Education and Workforce Committee, the ultimate Rhino committee, and, going to leadership meetings and, there would be Ginny Thomas, married to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, and she's in a top position with House Majority Leader Dick Armey. So I'd be in meetings with her and talking things. I guess they'd be talking coalitions, and it seemed blatantly political. And and I felt sorry for her because I felt like she was always getting beat up on. But I remember thinking, why is she here though? Why is she doing this? Her husband's on the Supreme Court. This is so inappropriate. So, and also, if you can't complain about the press, some of the press beating up on you when you're putting yourself out there that way and in such an inappropriate manner.
So last line of questioning I've got for you then, is there any hope here? I mean, do you see anything turning around? Because I'm looking at the next couple of years as nothing's going to happen in the House positive. We're going to see a bunch of, just wrangling back and forth. Trump is going to come back, and it's going to be the Trump show for a while, and that pie fight. Do you see anything positive coming out of this?
Well, my disappointment in Merrick Garland is about as strong as it's ever been and has been for a while. I think he has sold us out. I hope the special counsel does something quickly. But look, there are people who have key positions in Congress, Republican members of Congress, who belong behind bars. And instead they have power. And I think if Merrick Garland had done his job, that would not be the case. So much has happened. Democracy is the victim here. And I don't know if it's just taking a long time, but the credible people that I listen to who actually, have skin in the game or have been in this arena, who have worked at DOJ and been former federal prosecutors, they are as alarmed as I am. And those are the people that I listen to. So I think that Merrick Garland is an absolute disaster. And had he done his job, obviously Trump wouldn't be running. I don't think Republicans would have had a House majority. And we're sitting here waiting as if we expect something to happen any minute. But, we've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah. Do you expect anything to happen? I mean, because I remember, look, you were the one behind the reading of the Mueller report. And
yeah.
I'm going, Robert Mueller was never going to be our savior. I had people come on this program saying, Trump's going to resign any day. I'm like, no, he's not. All of this hope in somebody else. Shouldn't this be the moment where we go, America, stand up, vote, throw this bum out, show the world that this is not who we are?
Well, and I think that some key Democrats need to march down Pennsylvania Avenue and have a chat with the president and say Merrick Garland has to go. He's not doing his job. That is not intervening in DOJ activity. And of course, the special counsels would be still in place. But Wray should go. I mean, none of this is making sense, especially now that we know, new stuff is coming out about Barr and just all of it. It's absolutely alarming. It's kind of late in the game for some of this stuff, and we're going to get into an election year. And then what's Merrick Garland going to say? Well, Trump's a candidate. Now it's an election year, so we can't do anything. That is absolutely alarming. The fact that Steve Bannon can still sit behind a microphone instead of sitting behind bars is alarming. And Roger Stone and Michael Caputo and a whole slew of the rest of them. And they're out there, creating more of this dangerous, I don't even want to call it right-wing radio, right-wing media. We're talking fascism and treason, and it shouldn't be happening. And Merrick Garland is the reason that it is at this point, because he's the only one that could give us justice that would stop this.
We'll see what happens. Sherry, I appreciate you taking time for us. Thanks so much. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Sherry Jacob is a political strategist and host of the podcast. We'll get links out on social media. Quick break, right back.
Happens in the oceans doesn't stay in the oceans.
Spate of new studies finds climate impacts are escalating. Forest Service bans logging in Alaskan rainforest again. Plus,
it is now 90 seconds to midnight.
Scientists move metaphoric doomsday clock closer to catastrophe.
All of that metaphoric doomsday and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Xbox has also announced they're going woke too, because of climate change, that they're adding a new feature to their default setting, and it will turn off after so long to save the environment, the power.
It automatically turns off when you're not using it to save energy and save you money? Sounds terrible, Fox News. That's going woke? I'd say don't change, but I know you never will. This is your Green News Report.
Ted Cruz writes on Twitter, first gas stoves, then your coffee, now you're gunning for my Xbox.
Isn't it crazy, though?
Okay, Desi Doyen, let the metaphorical doomsday begin.
Yes, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists moved the doomsday clock to 90 seconds to midnight this week. That's the closest that the metaphoric measure of existential threats to humanity has ever been to disaster. Board member Mary Robinson, the former president of Ireland, said the new clock time reflects increased nuclear risks from Russia's invasion of Ukraine and, of course, climate.
The illegal invasion of a sovereign state by a nuclear-armed permanent member of the UN Security Council, together with the acceleration of the climate crisis, explains why the clock has now been moved even closer to midnight.
Well, we know why it's been moved closer to midnight. Only question is, what the hell is anyone going to do about it?
The scientists also cited the lingering pandemic and the breakdown of global norms and the institutions needed to address risks as putting humanity at greater risk of self-destruction.
Other than that, everything is fine.
And a series of recent studies this month underscore the escalating dangers of man-made global warming. First, researchers with Carnegie Mellon University found that the world's glaciers are shrinking and disappearing faster than predicted, so much so that even if governments meet ambitious global climate targets, the world is still likely to lose half of its glaciers by 2100, with substantial impacts on global sea levels and population migration. A second study has found that the oceans last year were the hottest ever recorded since comprehensive records began in the 1950s. It also confirmed ocean warming has accelerated since 1990. The oceans absorb about 90% of the excess heat trapped by humanity's greenhouse gas emissions. It matters because hotter oceans turbocharge extreme weather like hurricanes, torrential rains, and floods, increase sea level rise, and affect rainfall patterns on land. As lead study author, climate scientist Dr. Michael Mann told MSNBC,
worsened drought, worsened heat, greater heat, worse floods, superstorms. This is the face of climate change. It's not subtle. It's not far away. The impacts are being felt by us now on a daily basis. It's simply a matter of how bad we're willing to let it get.
And it's not just the oceans. A new study this week reports exceptional warming in Greenland, with the Greenland ice sheet hitting its hottest temperature in 1,000 years. The eastern Horn of Africa just saw an unprecedented fifth straight year of failed rains, making it the longest and most severe drought in 70 years of precipitation data.
I thought you said this doomsday was supposed to be metaphorical.
But there is some encouraging news.
Oh, nice.
Full data from 2022 is not in yet, but according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, it appears that last year was the first year in which the U.S. got more electricity from renewables than from coal. Globally, the world appears to have reached peak fossil fuels for electricity, with wind and solar now the cheapest sources of electricity for 96% of the world's population, according to nonprofit group Rocky Mountain Institute. And finally, great news, the U.S. Forest Service has banned logging and mining development in more than half of Alaska's Tongass National Forest. The action reverses a Trump-era rollback and reinstates the roadless rule for the Tongass, one of the largest temperate rainforests in the world. It also ends large-scale logging across the entire Tongass, ensuring it continues to provide critical habitat for birds, wildlife, and salmon, and preserves the capacity of the ancient forest to absorb a significant chunk of humanity's carbon emissions.
Well, that seals it. With all that good news, I'm moving that clock back a few seconds. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks, the Twitters, and the Mastodons at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So our quote of the day, former Obama senior advisor Dan Pfeiffer, he wrote, "I worked in the West Wing during a financial crisis, a pandemic, multiple active terrorist plots, once-in-a-century storms, and the rise of ISIS. None of those threats were anywhere near as frightening as the two times the House Republicans tried to take the full faith and credit of the United States hostage." He writes, "In both cases, a group of radical extremists with a faint grasp of reality, led by a weak speaker, almost stumbled ass backwards into the global financial crisis that would make 2008 look like an economic head cold." And look where we are now. Right back where we are. The hostage situation hath begun, and the assault on working people continues. And now in full court press by Republicans, conservative front groups, wealthy donors. And now we're going to rein in spending. I don't know if you saw the speaker over the weekend. McCarthy was on one of the talking head shows talking about, we need to get Washington spending under control. And that's code for there's a Democrat in the White House, and now's a good time to hold the globe hostage so we can go after those entitlement programs. You know, your Social Security and your Medicare that you paid for. Yeah, they've named that entitlement programs. You earned those. You paid for those. Those are yours. But they're trying to take them. And here to share some thoughts on where we are, I've asked Michael Lighty to come talk with us. Michael's the president of Healthy California Now. HealthyCA.org is their website. Here to share some thoughts on what we're seeing as the push to destroy our Medicare system. Michael, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. Great to be here.
You know, it's interesting to me that, whenever we get into these moments and you got a Republican-controlled House and there's a Democrat in the White House, it's always this ticking bomb kind of scenario of, how much can they get? How much sequester? How many pounds of flesh? And how do working people take it on the chin? And Social Security at the front of it, Medicare at the front of it. And it's amazing to me that even someone like Donald Trump says, leave that alone, that we don't push back harder.
I agree. And the fact is, much of this debt that they don't necessarily want to honor is as a result of the tax cuts for the rich. So we get it coming and going. And in fact, Social Security contributes nothing to the deficit. It's separately funded. The trust fund, the payroll taxes we pay go into that trust fund, and that's not part of the general fund. Medicare, of course, is the best deal going. Ask anyone who's 64 how desperate they are to get on Medicare, turn 65 and get on Medicare. Healthcare costs go through the roof. Administration and profits in the private sector, huge. In Medicare, it's 2%. 2% of the dollar goes to something other than patient care, 98% for the health care we need. That's just too good of a deal. That's too good of a government program for the GOP to leave alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of these things where you go, just common sense. And this is where, I almost don't care if it's a public or a private pool, but one giant insurance pool seems like the most common sense way to mitigate risk. Everybody in. It seems, I don't know, even a dumb truck driver can figure that out.
Well, it's exactly right. And in fact, that is why Medicare is so successful for that group of people who are in that risk pool, right, over 65. But it's just common sense. What's going to have leverage against this huge healthcare industry? Of all these hospitals and pharmaceutical companies, who's going to have leverage to actually negotiate so you can control costs? It's going to be one risk pool. It's exactly right. And it's the one thing that our system lacks that characterizes other national systems. The fragmentation and the resulting waste and profiteering is at the heart of our problems.
Do you find it interesting, like I do, that they've labeled Social Security and Medicare as entitlement programs?
Hell, Yes, I do, Rick. As a matter of fact, that's a way to delegitimize it because somehow in the right-wing universe, if you're, non-deserving, you get an entitlement. And in fact, as you said, it's an earned benefit. We paid for it. Payroll taxes have gone up to pay for it. In both cases, actually, Medicare and Social Security. So it's just another messaging point, and I'm afraid that the other side, our side in favor of Social Security and Medicare, hasn't necessarily done as good a job, and we've often accepted that frame of entitlement.
Yeah, I've never have because look, I pay to do it every week. I see it come out of my check, and I know the good that it did for my grandparents. My grandmother was allowed to, my grandparents lived in their home, Social Security, their union pension, and a little bit of a savings got them through their lives. Medicare saved their lives number of times. They didn't die in medical debt. Sounds like a good bargain to me. I don't know why we'd want to destroy it.
I agree. My grandparents in the same situation. My grandmother diabetic for over 35 years. Medicare paid for her insulin. My grandfather's painter's pension kept them, safe and sound. And you're absolutely right. The only reason they want to go after them is because they work, because they're a successful example of government providing for people and meeting working people's needs. And that's, of course, the opposite of what that Republican philosophy is all about.
See, this is one of those things where I'm torn, and maybe you can help because I'm torn down the middle on this. Is it the hatred of government and the belief that government can do nothing, and then they set out and prove that government can do nothing, or is it just the greed that they want to get their corporate masters want to get their hands on all that money and all that ability to deny us the things that we need? And I look at these advantage plans. I look at how much it costs, the privatization that we've inflicted on Medicare already and the damage that it's doing. I look at this and I go, which is it? Is it or is it both?
I think it's both because look at take Social Security. Well, if you privatize Social Security, where does that retirement monies go? Into Wall Street's investment pools. They make huge commissions off that money. On the other hand, what happens if government doesn't look like it can take care of the elderly? Well, that delegitimizes government. That justifies tax cuts for the wealthy. It's all of a piece, I think, Rick. And in the case of Medicare, the truth is that those you periodically hear about insolvency and so forth. That's just, again, a ruse to say we're not willing to pay for it, even though it's the most efficient and effective healthcare program out there. And so we privatize it because what they want to do, they don't necessarily want to reduce the cost of Medicare. They want to shift the cost, right, from the public to the private and shift the burden so that people can say, politicians, others, well, hey, that's not us. That's your private Medicare plan. Go talk to them. And the truth is that privatization has been a bipartisan dynamic. And that this goes back to the Balanced Budget Act of 1997 when they opened the door to privatize Medicare. And ever since then, Medicare has gotten more private. Our life expectancies have decreased, and our share of the GDP going into healthcare spending has risen. So it's not exactly working.
No, again, this is where I say Republicans and corporate Democrats have destroyed this country in ways that we could spend days talking about, from media control to bad trade policies to the privatization of Medicare that gets us to this point. So the question then becomes, how do we reclaim this message? Because when you sit down and you explain to people, you go, look, the amount of money that's being spent on these privatized plans is more than we spend on the traditional Medicare, which, if you would have threatened to take from my grandmother, she'd have beat you with her walker. How do we reclaim that?
Well, I think the people's experience in these Medicare Advantage plans, it sounds good. Hey, more benefits might cost me less. But the truth is that once you actually need health care, they start denying it and you have no way to appeal it. And traditional Medicare comes with guarantees. Basically, if your doctor orders it, you're going to get it, and you have a very clear path to appeal if that doesn't happen. How we're going to change it is improve Medicare, first step. Like what we tried to do with Build Back Better was cover prescription drugs more effectively, cover lower prices, cover eyeglasses and hearing and dental benefits. Then the rationale for these private plans goes away. Secondly, we've got to really be serious about creating that single risk pool you're talking about. And the best way to do that is Medicare for all. Everybody in, nobody out, have the leverage to lower drug prices, get the profits out of healthcare, and just make sure that the money goes to people's healthcare, not the private companies' profits. The profits are huge. This one estimate had overpayment in Medicare Advantage plans over a 10-year period of over $130 billion. Actually, a 9-year period, 2010 to 2019. So it's really extraordinary how much.
What?
Yeah. Yes.
What?
This UC, University of California, San Diego economist, when you add everything up, his initial base estimate was 106 billion, and then you go on top of that, you get as much as 130 billion. And you look at United Healthcare itself, right, has 6 million Medicare Advantage plans. It received excess payments of 6 billion. Excess payments.
And how does that happen? I mean, and then why aren't we holding them criminally responsible? I mean,
yes. Well, because CMS is complicit. Basically, they had an audit program that showed these overpayments. And just today, they announced that they're actually not going to demand any of that money back, because they are basically in bed with the insurance companies. And it's really, there's blood on everybody's hands on this one, because they have the tools, they have the audit, they know what has happened, and they refuse to go after them. They refuse to lower the rates that these Medicare plans get for paying for sicker people. But the fact is, they can't prove that those people are actually sick, and they can't even document the basis for the extra reimbursement they ask for.
So is this the upcoding that we hear about? That
this is the upcoding.
This is where they send people to your house to convince you that there's something wrong with you, so you'll go and the commercials on TV for you to ask your doctor and all this stuff. Is that this part of all this?
That is exactly the part of it. That's exactly the part of it, and it's largely responsible for the overpayments. And they really their kind of reimbursement in one single year, for example, Medicare paid $2.6 billion for diagnosis backed up only by those health assessments that you talked about, where someone comes to the home. They said they had no records for 3.5 million people that actually, they got any of the care that this assessment called for.
Wow.
And CMS knows this. And they don't do anything about it because they are so compromised with the industry.
I mean, so the swinging door. This is the swinging door in action. Now, this is the revolving door of regulators overseeing industry and then going back into industry. This is that thing.
And it's congressional pressure. So Kristen Sinema led an effort among 15 senators to say, do not cut Medicare Advantage reimbursements, even though everyone knows they're overcharging Medicare. So it's political pressure from Congress as well.
It's crazy. I mean, and again, we don't hear this stuff. I mean, this is the first I'm hearing of a lot of this stuff. Because I did have some questions, like on the drug issue. I know Medicare cannot negotiate for prescription drug prices because, thanks George W. Bush, we're Americans, damn it. We pay full price. But these advantage plans, they get to negotiate for lower prices, right?
Yes, they do.
So this is the gimmick. This was the poison pill to destroy to bring the whole system down. Yeah.
Well, the privatization is the camel nose under the tent that's undermining traditional Medicare to the point where you can question its solvency. So exactly, they basically create a situation where more and more the private funds divert money from traditional Medicare, right? It's like 102% of the cost of traditional Medicare. And so all of a sudden you say, well, Medicare doesn't have any money because it's gone over to the private companies. As I mentioned, Medicare is 98% goes to patient care of each dollar. For these private plans, it's 85%, 15% in overhead and profits. So you siphon all that money and then you say, gee, Medicare's, going bankrupt. Well, I wonder why.
So, I guess the last line of questioning I've got for you, because I'm outraged. I got to imagine people who are, looking at Medicare for the future, worried that it's going to be there. They've got to be outraged. What do people do?
Well, I think we do have to demand an improvement in traditional Medicare. And just like they privatize the drug plans, we got to get rid of that. We got to be able to negotiate drug prices, all drug prices, not 20, but all drug prices through Medicare, and create that risk pool for that. We've got to expand the eligibility of Medicare. Remember, that was the idea originally, Build Back Better, go down to 55. Yes, we need to do that, and we need to keep going down, because what's going to happen as a result of this debt limit is some commission's going to come out and say, let's raise the Medicare age to 67, right?
Yep.
And my God, it's already bad enough out there waiting to turn 65. Imagine 2 more years, right? So we have to be able to both fight defensively against the privatization, not only against Medicare Advantage, but this other program called ACO REACH. And we've got to then demand Medicare for all. And the way to get there is to improve Medicare, and then to make sure that we lower the eligibility age ultimately to everybody.
Yeah, I'm a supporter of Medicare for all, because look, what we do, what the public pays for, are the most expensive people in healthcare. We pay for the young, we pay for the old. Half of all children born in this country are born on Medicaid. We take care of the poor, with the indigent with Medicaid, and the elderly who use the most of their health care in the last 5 years of their life, we've got on Medicare. And then now we're feeding an industry of executives and shareholders now, evidently, too. The healthy people pay insurance premiums to these big companies, and they're siphoning healthcare dollars off. It just seems like common sense to put everybody into that one pool, have one insurance company that pays one set of things. That just seems logical. I guess probably why it'll never happen.
Well, it's not just logical. It's a matter of dollars and cents. I mean, the Congressional Budget Office estimated save $650 billion. In California, the estimate is 158 billion by 2031 if we went to Medicare for all style health system. And in fact, we can do that, Rick, as you know, and eliminate the out-of-pocket costs we got. No more of those deductibles, right? Which is the amount you pay for care after you paid for insurance, the co-pays that you have to do. And the premiums, of course, go away. So it's really quite extraordinary the amount of success the healthcare industry has had lobbying these elected officials to not only privatize the existing public programs, but to prevent the very common sense solution that we all need to be in one program.
Now, I would argue not just lobbying our elected officials, but us. I mean, there are people, no, I don't want Medicare. And you go, do you know? I love my privatized health care that denies my care. I love the shiny card in my wallet.
Yeah, it's really something. And same thing with Medicare Advantage, all those ads on TV. How can you resist, right? I mean, the constant barrage of advertising and the constant barrage that, the private sector is always better, right? Well, yeah, for them.
No, you're absolutely right. Michael, I appreciate the time. If folks want to get more information, healthyca.org, the website, right?
That is the website. You can go to that website and calculate how much you can save under Medicare for All. And you'll be surprised to learn it's thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah, if only we had a movement to move in that direction. Michael Lighty, I appreciate the time. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
Oh, I would love to, Rick. Thanks a lot.
Good stuff. Make sure you check out the website, healthyca.org. We'll get links out on social media, how you can take a look at that. I want to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I listened to the numbers, and you look at the amount of money that we spend on these Advantage plans, and it's ridiculous. I mean, it really is. It should be criminal, and to have legislators who, Senator Dipsy Doo from Arizona, jumping into that, it's quite remarkable. And the question is how much more of this are we going to put up with? Well, eventually we wake up and say, no, we demand better. We want better. I don't know. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well, better than I have been. Let's talk about the broken health care system. As y'all know, my husband was taken into the hospital Wednesday night, transported from one hospital to the other. Well, he didn't get operated on until today. They had kept saying, oh, we're going to do it Saturday. Then Saturday they said, oh, well, we can't, blah, blah, because, and their story was, they couldn't find an anesthesiologist. They were shorthanded.
Wow.
And they told us, well, it's not just you. We're backed up with all kinds of surgeries. So he wasn't operated on until today.
Wow. But here's the thing, and this is, I hear this all across the country. Coming out of this pandemic, the number of people who have left the industry because of, name the reason, and we haven't replaced them fast enough. And I don't know if that's true in every area, but especially in small rural areas. Yeah, I think the shortage is huge. That's horrible.
Yeah, it is. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, because this is a major hospital where, we took him to. It's in West Virginia. And I thought, this is ridiculous when this huge hospital claims that their problem is they can't find the anesthesiologist. I thought, no, and if it's not just this major healthcare system, it's a teaching hospital. I thought, these other hospitals, my gosh.
Yeah, imagine. No, I hope he does well. I hope he's okay. I hope he recovers well. Wow.
Yeah, so I just wanted to interject that in there.
I appreciate it.
As an example. So thanks, and he came through surgery well. So I'll talk to you later.
Best to him and you. Thank you, Alice. No, it's scary. And look, the sad reality is when my son had his appendix burst, it was the same thing. We were on a holding pattern, waiting for an anesthesiologist, waiting for an operating room, waiting for the resources that because of consolidation, not there. And healthcare is one of these things where instead of it's shrinking, instead of contraction, we should be expanding. Healthcare is one of those industries we should be moving people into. You want to go and be a nurse? Tuition's free. You want to go to be a doctor? We're going to pay for that. We're not going to saddle you with a lifetime of debt and a lifetime of student loans. But are we moving on those policies? No. And for me, the idea of, I don't want the government running the hospitals. I don't want them hiring the doctors. I want hospitals to run independently. I want them to be run by actual doctors, not bean counters. I know my military friends love TRICARE and the universal system, the government-run healthcare system that is the military system. I don't know in this country if that would fly. But to have one insurance pool, just makes sense from the administrative costs. Just makes sense in the forms, filling out the forms and calling one office. In the having one schedule and not, I had someone, lay out to me why the difference in prices because of the different kinds of baskets that people fall in, self-pay, private insurance, government insurance, and how they can get the most out of each. And the sad reality is it's too complicated of a system. One insurance pool would cover all of that. And you know what you would think about? How to get well. You would think about not, who's got the coupon for the heart attack this week, but how do I get the best care as fast as possible? That's what we should be working for. Just my thoughts. Want to hear yours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1992. That was the day the gravediggers of Chicago ended their 43-day strike. The United Press International's headline declared, "The dead will rest in peace now that Chicago area gravediggers have reached a tentative contract." The gravediggers were part of Service Employees International Union Local 106. The strike started on December 20th when workers at 4 Chicago area cemeteries walked off the job. At issue was wages, overtime, and health benefits. 22 other local cemeteries then locked out their workers. With the gravediggers on strike and locked out, more than 1,000 burials were delayed. The Chicago Rabbinical Society was able to get a court order for some of the burials to go forward due to Orthodox Jewish practice that requires burial within 24 hours. By the time the strike was settled, 300 burials were still waiting. Unless there is a labor dispute, grave digging is work that does not often find itself in the headlines. It is one of the many unsung types of labor that it takes to keep a big city like Chicago operating. In 1974, the famous radio host Studs Terkel published a book based on oral histories he had conducted with working people over the course of 3 years. The title of the book was simply Working. The book featured interviews that ranged from jazz musicians to pharmacists, farmers to welders. One of the most poignant interviews was with a gravedigger named Elmer Ruiz. Ruiz said, "I usually wear myself some black sunglasses. I never go to a funeral without sunglasses. It's a good idea because your eyes is the first thing that shows when you have a big emotion. Always these black sunglasses."
Big news from congressional Republicans. After years of failing to unearth any proof that America's elections are corrupted by flagrant cases of voter fraud, the GOP has now found a whopper. Unfortunately for the party's voter integrity police, what they've uncovered is not some nefarious Democratic plot, but a scheme of mass deception by one of their own Congress creditors, George Santos. Last November, he effectively stole a New York City congressional seat. How? By making himself up. Santos invented a fictional George that hid his criminal record and touted an amazing storybook past he never lived. No, he is not Jewish. His grandparents were not Holocaust survivors. He was not a volleyball star at a prestigious college he never even attended. He was not a renowned Wall Street banker, though he did help run a Florida Ponzi scheme. He was not a New York City real estate baron, and the mystery money that financed his campaign apparently came from nowhere. Naturally, when Congress's fraud-busting Republican leaders learned that this hyper-fraudster came from their own ranks, they promptly expelled him. Just kidding. Instead, Kevin McCarthy, the GOP's unscrupulous congressional leader, has fully embraced this defrauder as an honorable member of his legislative team, sanctimoniously declaring, quote, "The voters elected Santos to serve." That makes Kevin even more dishonest than George. 1, the people did not elect Santos, but voted for the caricature he concocted to fool them. 2, McCarthy doesn't give a damn about the integrity of elections. He's only clinging to George because his own support in the House is so iffy that he needs Santos's vote to save his own worthless political hide. This is Jim Hightower saying, Santos is a congenital liar, but McCarthy is a self-serving political hack, and neither one should be in public office.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So evidently, a number of states, Arizona, Michigan, New Hampshire, and Wisconsin, the state Republican parties are saying, we want more Trump. Evidently, the disappointing midterms that they had, they want their star to come back and rile the troops, which is going to be interesting considering the potential for indictments, well, any day now down in Georgia. Well, again, we'll see. We've been down this road. Mueller, Merrick Garland's coming, all of this stuff. I don't know. Georgia's always been that blind spot. Anyway, here share some thoughts on more Trump. our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So are indictments coming? Are we planning this? I know I've been hearing this for, well, it's been 4 or 5 years now that they're coming for him. They're going to get him. Do you expect anything?
Well, I've always said that the weak spot is going to be New York, and then after that, after the election, then Georgia was added to that list. I still think New York's a possibility for a couple of reasons. Of course, the company, had problems in New York. But I believe indictments, plural.
Plural?
Yes, plural, are going to be on the way. And if you look at a statement made today, I don't know if this is getting a lot of press attention, but it should. To look at the kind of weird, I guess you'd call it, grand jury system Georgia has. They have two, the grand jury and the special grand jury. It's a little bit different than a normal special grand jury. If you resisted in the grand jury, then you can have a special grand jury convened, and it has more of the ability, as I understand it legally, to drag people in, which they did, whether it was Lindsey Graham or Rudy or the former general that was drug in. They have the ability to do that. Now, Fannie Willis, who's I think it's Fulton County, DA, the media is hounding the judge. They want to release parts of what the special grand jury is going to send the grand jury, all right? Which, by the way, the grand jury that convenes is convening as we speak today and tomorrow, and I don't know how many days after that. So that's kind of interesting. And Fannie Willis went before the judge, and if you look at what she said, as I understand it, she said that she doesn't want anything released because of the defense capabilities of the potential defendants, plural. She said that.
Okay, yeah.
All right? So if you look at what she said before the judge, defendants, she didn't say, I just don't want this released. She said because of the defense of the defendants, meaning something's coming and it's multiple. Could be 2, could be 3. Now, I don't know if it's going to be Trump, but I believe it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen with Merrick Garland and DOJ, but I do think, because if you, I don't think I'm reading into her statement. I think there's something there.
Interesting. No, I'm hoping there are multiple people indicted in this because this was a massive scheme. I'm hoping there are people all of those electors who submitted false paperwork. They should be locked up. There's a lot of these crimes that you and I would have done. We'd have silver bracelets on right now.
Yeah, I know. I messed a piece of paperwork up. I know.
Yeah. See, you do know. See,
I know.
But this but here again, this is one of those moments where, you ask the average Trump supporter if they'll still support him if he's indicted, and I'm sure that they're going to go, yeah, because the deep state's coming for him. It's all the deep state. So this is another one of those moments that, again, feeds into our polarization, don't you think?
Well, it does. Of course, I have a whole different theory. As I said on your show last February, a year ago, that Trump will never be the nominee. If he would go in the convention, he would win. He still will have supporters no matter what happens down here in Georgia. If he goes in the convention, he will win, but I'm arguing he will not go into that convention as a candidate. Just look at what happened, and I don't think I'm over-dramatizing. Look what happened this past weekend. There's something beginning to occur there. Maybe not with the hardcore base, but something occurring there. But back to Georgia, yeah, there would be people that would say that it's a plot, et cetera. But I don't know who's going to be indicted, but there are going to be, like I said, I believe indictments plural.
Yeah. Is there a scenario where people are indicted, but it's not Trump? I mean, because we all heard the perfect phone call, which sounds like a crime to me. That sounds like a crime to me.
It could be, but I think that if it was ever happening, it will happen now with Fannie Willis, due to the nature of the phone call of, find me. acquire me. It's not like double check the system to see if there was fraud. It was find me.
Yeah.
Can't you find? So, I mean, you can look at a lot of interpretation of that. But if it's going to happen, it will happen with Fannie Willis. It will not happen with DOJ.
Now,
that's my feeling.
And looking at what's going on in Georgia, and they're saying a decision is imminent, and they don't want the special grand jury stuff coming out because it is their roadmap. But also today they began presenting evidence in New York to a grand jury.
Well, that's what I had just said. The two weaknesses.
Yeah, on the Stormy Daniels thing.
Yeah, New York has always been a weak area, but then this was new, popping up, in Georgia. And again, if you look at how these two grand juries operate down there, and her statement, which I just don't think she would go into court and say, "Oh, I don't want this looked at by anybody right now," but she specifically mentioned doesn't want it to affect the defense of the defendants. So I think it's a foregone conclusion. Something's coming.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, over the weekend you had the Trump event, a high school auditorium with like 400 people.
Right.
And they were saying it was a low energy rollout of his campaign. And I'm going, low energy rollout, 400 people in a high school gym. That's a no energy rollout.
Well, especially for Trump, because look, as you and I know, he had amazing crowds. Of course, so did Bernie Sanders. When he was first running, and that's a high energy thing. And they were drawing a lot of people. And Trump had that ability to get thousands of people out at events. Even last year, he would have the ability to do some things. This year, obviously, a lot has happened. The political base that looks at elections and the people that are kind of the movers and shakers within the Republican side have been laying low. They have been in the last 4, 5, 6 months. They've been laying low on this whole thing. And I think when you go to a Trump event, and then, first of all, it was on purpose, no question about it, Rick, as you know the old trick. You have an event,
a small room.
Put it in a small room in a hotel so that you have to open up the hotel room to fit the crowd, because you know how you do that, you stage it. But in the first place, to have a Trump event in an auditorium, why? And 100 people outside just waiting to get in when it used to be thousands. I mean, but why why did they do that? Because they knew it was going to be low energy.
Yeah. Did you see this interview over the weekend where the woman asked him, "Can you say something nice about Joe Biden?" And he literally, there was literally nothing he could say.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's kinder in a way to Biden than Mitch McConnell's wife.
Well, there is some truth to that, but I did want to get your thoughts on his backing the Saudi Golf Tour. Evidently, there are going to be a bunch of professional golfers on this LIV golf tour that's going to be going through his courses in Florida, Virginia, and Florida. In Virginia and New Jersey. Any thoughts on does this hurt him at all? Does the fact that he's marrying up to the Saudis?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's been expected. When Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, when the whole Khashoggi deal started, there was no question that he was in trouble around the world. And there's also no question that Trump stepped in and helped salvage him. No doubt about it. When you get the President of the United States stepping in and then put pressure on other particular leaders, and the Saudis have a lot of money. But as far as Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, there were 85 phone calls to Mohammed bin Salman in a 1-month period of time. His father, of course, with the Qataris, was trying to borrow money. There's a whole Mideast deal there going on. And then there was that foundation created with a couple of Trump officials that were forming this consulting group, and all of a sudden they were miraculously paid amazing money to be part of the whole Israeli Arab consortium that was established through the Trump administration. So you can connect all the dots. So this doesn't surprise me. Look, Pompeo is trying to run for president, which is foolish, but he's trying to run for president. He quoted in his book Mohammed bin Salman, and criticized Khashoggi, who's dead. So there's no shame when it comes to Saudi money.
Yeah,
I used to live in the kingdom, as you know, and worked in a company for a year there. And the kingdom is all about money, and the kingdom uses money to acquire people, places, and things. And golf tournaments to acquire people, places, and things.
And golf tournaments. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show with Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman, political analyst. I also wanted to get your thoughts on, we saw the videos that were released on Friday. I know your son's a police officer. There are good police officers. These kind of things taint the entire pool. I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on what you saw in that.
Oh yes, I mean it's horrific. It's inexcusable. Now I saw two extremes. These are just a couple of people. I don't want to overdo this on two people make a statement and it becomes law. One person had made a statement that this is done every single day and by everybody. That's not accurate. And then there were other people that totally excused it, which I don't know how they could, and that's not accurate. And I talked to a lot of people, including my son and other police officers I know, and I think, that a lot of police officers are absolutely, completely appalled, and do not side with, with these officers in Memphis. Usually say, there's a court process, and you have to, go through the court process. But if you look at the video, there was no secret thing here where he had a gun or an automatic weapon and we didn't see it. That wasn't the case. And then the high-fiving and everything else that was done afterwards was just unbelievable.
No, it's disgraceful, but
I can't believe it.
No, but it's one of these things that I keep coming back to. At some point, there has to be change. There has to be some cultural change.
Well, Jim Jordan of Ohio was asked a question in the media about this, and he said, well, this is very interesting, Rick. He said, well, no law would have prevented this. Well, okay, we have laws about murder, don't we? And maybe that law in itself about murder doesn't prevent a murder, but it helps, obviously, to have the law to deal with somebody that commits murder. So when, somebody makes that statement, well, the passing a law doesn't do anything. There are reasons there are laws, to try to do something. I don't know that you can pass, a law specifically, obviously, for the case, but there can be something done, I assume, to the Department of Justice in particular, to have some type of setting of a standard of not just dealing with this, the law will deal with this, but setting of a standard of how people are to deal with situations across the country.
Yeah, I mean, and ending qualified immunity is one of the things that keeps being thrown out. Any thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The qualified immunity, the stuff that basically says that they're not going to be held liable.
Well, I mean, I would assume they have to have liability.
No, evidently, this is one of the things that even Lindsey Graham's talking about potentially, moving on this qualified immunity stuff that keeps popping up. That they're not personally responsible. Obviously, if they get convicted of a crime, that's one thing. But there's this is what I'm being told is the potential remedy, and I was curious if you had a thought.
Well, I mean, they could have people can have insurance, just like malpractice, and the police officer could have insurance, or the union could, be part of an insurance program that, somebody would have to pay out of it because they may not have particular money themselves, but they at least would forfeit that. But exempting them from anything with liability I would think would be wrong, because anybody that's convicted or not convicted, O.J. Simpson is a great case, was acquitted, but went to a civil court, right?
Yeah, eventually, but then he moved to Florida and hid all his money in pension funds, and they didn't get anything filed bankruptcy.
Well, that's true, but at least technically you can still go after somebody in a civil case. So I would assume why would they be different?
Yeah, but I just looked it up in the definition of qualified immunity is a legal doctrine that keeps police officers safe from civil lawsuits. And it says, look, Democrats want to, end it. Republicans, say that that goes too far. I've had people.
I did not know there's qualified immunity in every case.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that there's no fear of. It's the city who gets sued. It's not the individuals. So the cities get sued, and the cities go bankrupt, and the cities, do all this stuff. But it's not the individuals.
I knew the cities pay, but I did not know, Rick, that there was qualified immunity in every particular case. I had no idea.
Well, this is what they're saying, and this is why I asked, because I'm not sure where the answer is, because look, I've had friends who have become policemen over the years, and becoming in every case they change. And I think of a friend that I went to high school with who was one of the most passive guys you would have ever met. In fact, I used to beat up on him all the time in high school to try and toughen him up because he could have been a heck of a basketball player if he had a spine. He became a university policeman, and within 2 years, he was basically thrown out for beating people up. So he went from pacifist to abuser within a very short period of time, and not even really in a big city environment. So I can't imagine the pressure of this mentality that there's a war zone going on and the citizens are the enemy. There's got to be a cultural shift.
I mean, I think that there's good and bad in all aspects of all the fields, and I know we've had a lot of police that have been responsible in things, but in cases like this, you have to look at it and say, something went horrifically wrong, not a little bit wrong, horrifically wrong. There's something there, some culture created by someone or allowed by someone, and that's got to be delved into.
I'm there with you. Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend.
Thank you, Rick.
As always, our good friend Bob Ney. I want to take a quick break, right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. What follows is for those who want to change the world from what it is to what they believe it should be. Those words were penned in the opening paragraph of the book Rules for Radicals, whose author, Saul Alinsky, was born on this day in labor history. The year was 1909. Saul Alinsky became one of the most famous community organizers in Chicago and even U.S. history. Alinsky was born to Russian Jewish immigrants. He earned his degree in archaeology from the University of Chicago, but could not find work due to the Great Depression. His first turn at organizing was that of a part-time labor organizer for the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Soon, he left labor organizing for a more broad-based community organizing. He worked in the Back of the Yards, forming the Back of the Yards Council, which became a prototype for scores of community organizations. In 1940, Alinsky formed the Industrial Areas Foundation, which served as a leader in community organizing training. He traveled the country helping to form similar community organizations. He then worked with African American organizations, most notably helping to found Chicago's Woodland Organization. The Woodland Organization took on issues such as segregated housing and community health. The Woodland Organization remains active to this day. Alinsky's Rules for Radicals became a guidebook for organizing strategies for countless campaigns. A Time magazine article claimed that American democracy is being altered by Alinsky's ideas, and National Review magazine founder William F. Buckley said Alinsky was, quote, very close to being an organizational genius. At the core of his book are 12 straightforward maxims. For example, a good tactic is one your people enjoy. Another is keep the pressure on, never let up. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. You can check out our podcast there. Over the weekend, we did an episode on the video. And wow, we had a panel of folks come together for an in-depth discussion. A lot of folks over the years have said, hey, you do these quick hit 15-minute bits. We want to hear more in depth. So we spent an hour talking about the release of the videos of the murder of Tyree Nichols, and I got to tell you, it was angering. It's frustrating, and I have gotten a lot of responses and good stuff. And I appreciate people putting in their thoughts of ideas on where we go, how we solve things. And I even got a bunch of emails from people trying to defend what they saw. And that's the weird thing for me, is that you look at those videos and it's indefensible what they did. And yet I got he shouldn't have run. Oh, it didn't really happen the way the video makes it look. It was staged, was another, basic denialism and conspiracy theory stuff. And this is the this is the fear of where we are, that, we're trained that, nothing is what it appears. And that if it doesn't fit into our neat little ideology, like, the police never do this stuff, or the police always do this stuff. You can't solve anything. Look, I say this all the time. I support the police when they're not wrong. In this instance, there is no right here. The first video I saw were, angry cops rushing at a guy who was calm, going, "Hey, hey, we're really going to do this? Hey, can we not?" I saw angry policemen who were out for blood. And that guy was running scared for his life and had nowhere to go. I saw them pick him up off the ground and pummel him when he couldn't stand on his own. Indefensible. And the sad reality is we have almost no one anymore in power positions. We've got mass irresponsibility in powerful positions. People who are only out there to push an agenda. You've got politicians who should know better being irresponsible. And it's not just the police thing. I mean, I look at the video of Paul Pelosi that was released last week. And immediately the right-wing spin machine goes into, oh, it looks like he was having a gay tryst. Oh, he was cheating on Nancy with a guy. And that didn't really happen. Oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. Denialism, conspiracy theory. Oh, did it really happen the way it looks? And the New York Times went and got some tweets from some representatives who either doubted that the attack actually happened, or the details of the thing, or was it a male prostitution ring? Now, these are elected officials. These are people with big megaphones. These are media personalities. These are commentators who are supposed to be respected. Pushing nonsense and conspiracy. The guy who did it evidently was walking out of court and said the only thing that he regrets is he was sorry he didn't get more of them. But even that's not believed, because we've got irresponsible people in leadership. It's up to us, folks. It's up to us to claw some of this back. Senators, congressmen, they need to be better. Just my thoughts. I want to hear yours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcasts, you'll find ours. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.